Hey, family. In tonight's video, I want to talk about requesting an extension of time to file information returns. If you're not familiar, information returns are things such as your W-2s, your 1099 miscellaneous, anything within the 1099, 1098 series, right? These are forms that are submitted to the IRS, but also issued to a taxpayer as well. In tonight's video, we'll look at the deadlines, but we'll also take a look at how to receive an automatic extension of time and how with Form 1099 NEC and the W-2s, you actually can't receive an automatic extension of time, but you can still request one and see if that's approved by the IRS. Now, before I get too far into it, if you're new to the channel, new to me, first off, Happy New Year. My name is Timolyn Bowens, and I am America's favorite EA and also the owner of Bowens Tax Solutions, which is a virtual firm based in Louisville, Kentucky, and we focus on helping taxpayers resolve their IRS issues. Now, unnecessary civil penalties from the IRS are most definitely an issue that you want to avoid. That's why we're covering how to get an extension of time for filing these forms. Okay, so let's get right into it. What you want to make sure that you have if you are the taxpayer, or even if you're a tax professional filling out this form for a business, you want to make sure that you have the name of the business, which is the filer, that matches the SS4, right? So that's the application to get the EIN number. Then we want to have the address that's on file with the IRS. If the address has been updated, you can put the updated address and this will automatically update it within the IRS system, okay? So in this example, our filer is Best Employer Ever, LLC. The address is 101 North 7th Street, and it's located in Louisville, Kentucky, with a zip code of 40202. Now, the contact for this is going to be Best Boss Ever, and then we're going to provide their telephone number and then email address if applicable. I want to point out here that if you're a tax professional doing this on behalf of one of your business clients, you could put your information here, but remember that is going to also put you on the hook potentially if some of the information on the form is inaccurate, okay? Because with all of these information forms, there are civil penalties, as I mentioned, not only for late filing, but also for incorrect filings as well, okay? Now, moving along, here line two, we want to have the taxpayer identification number. So this is typically going to be the EIN of the business. Now, if at all possible, please e-file any tax form when you can. But something to point out here, we're going to mark whether or not the returns that we're asking for the extension on are going to be e-filed or if they're going to be paper filed. If you are requesting an extension of time for W-2s or 1099 NECs, specifically the NECs, this application for extension of time to file must be paper filed. And I'll talk about where to file that here in a little bit, okay? But just wanted to point that out to you. Now, we can still send the actual 1099s or W-2s electronically later, either using the Iris system, right? So that's the information return intake system. I had to think about what IRIS stood for. or through the FIRE system, which is the filing information return electronically system. Okay. So that's what I recommend you use. All right. Moving on to box four, if you're a tax professional, bookkeeper, and you're requesting an extension for more than one payer slash filer, you're going to enter the total number of payers or filers and attach a type list of names and tax identification numbers. Now, you can do that and put that number in here per the instructions. However, I don't recommend doing that. I highly, highly, highly advise you to actually fill out a separate 8809 for each filer. However, you can take that with a grain of salt if you'd like. And if you want to, you can put the total number of people that you're doing that for. And as the instructions say, you can type out a list with the name and tax identification number and attach it to this. Okay. Now, moving on to line five, we're going to only check this box if you already requested the automatic extension and now you need an additional extension. So check this out. This 8809 is not like the 4686, which is the request for extension for a 1040, or like the 7004, which is the extension for your corporation or your partnership. Those give you an additional 6 months to get the return filed. Where with the 8809, it's only giving you an additional 30 days to get the information returns filed. Okay. And those 30 days, please note, that's additional time to get them filed to the IRS, not to get it to the taxpayer. All right. So, big, big, big distinction there that you want to make sure that you understand. Now, when we move along, you want to check the forms that you're requesting an extension for. Okay. So let's say you need an extension for W-2s and the 1099 NECs, which that is the deadline is coming up first. Typically, that deadline is going to be on January 31st. However, this year, because we have the 31st falling on a weekend, the actual due date for our W-2s and 1099 NECs is going to be February 2nd. Okay. Now, to get them to the IRS is also going to be February 2nd. But for our 1099 miscellaneous forms, we are going to see a due date that is later on. Okay. And you can even get that paper filed to the IRS by March 2nd. You can get the, what do you call it? You can e-file it March 31st. And then with our 1099Bs, which is going to be those brokerage statements, and then with the 1099S for sales, those aren't going to be due until February 17th. So just something to note, the first thing that's going to be due are going to be those W-2s and the 1099 NECs. So in this example, we're checking the box for the W-2s and the 1099 NEC. You'll see everything that's in the series 1098, 1099, and then also your W-2Gs are going to be in this box here. Okay. So as I mentioned before, with all the forms except the W-2 and the 1099 NEC, you can receive an automatic 30-day extension when you file this form. However, if it's a W-2 or a 1099 NEC, you have to have a reason for why you need the extension, okay? Which is very interesting. I guess the IRS was tired of y'all. So These are the different criteria, and only one must be met, okay, for why the extension is needed. So the first one, we have the filer suffered a catastrophic event in a federally declared disaster area that made the filer unable to resume operations or made necessary records unavailable. I'll give you an example. In February of 2025, the state of Kentucky that I live in was hit hard with a flood statewide. The whole state was declared a federally declared disaster area. So, for small businesses who may have lost written record during that time or it affected their operations, this would be a valid excuse for them and reason for them to check this box. Now, the next one is pretty straightforward. Fire, casualty, or natural disaster affected the operation of the filer. In this scenario, it doesn't have to be a federally declared disaster, but you will need to make sure you have some kind of third-party documentation just to support your claim. The next one, we have death, serious illness, or unavoidable absence of the individual responsible for filing the information returns affected the operation of the filer. So, with that being said, not necessarily the business owner, but if we have a bookkeeper who takes care of the payroll, so they also take care of issuing the W-2s and 1099s, but they died, had a death in their family, serious illness, etc., that would be a qualification for that. Then we see the IRS give a little bit of grace for those who are in first year of establishment because you don't need any reason other than it being the first year of establishment, and you can check this box. Now, this here isn't an everyday situation, but essentially we don't have data for the person or persons, entity that should be receiving the form, right? Such as the K1, Form 1042-S, or the statement of sick pay required, and it gives the section there, okay? Now, the person who is filling out this form, so if it's best boss ever is going to sign this, their title is CEO, and they are going to date it. Now, like I said before, I highly advise that you go ahead and you e-file this, okay? If you can. But if you are just like the person we're using in this example, and you're requesting an extension to file 1099 NECs or W-2s, or W-2s, you do have to paper file this form, and you are going to send this to, take you here, I was going to read it, but you can read, right? You're going to send it to the Department of the Treasury, Internal Revenue Service Center in Utah, okay? And that is where it will go. Now, I do want to point out when you send anything to the IRS, you want to make sure that you send it certified mail. You also want to make sure that you give yourself enough time to have it postmarked by the due date because this form is due to the IRS by the original due date. So for 1099 NECs and W-2s, that's going to be on February 2nd for the 2025 tax year. Okay, so February 2nd of 2026. With the updated USPS postmark rule, they're not going to be marking this until it actually goes into processing, not the day that you turn it in necessarily. That's why getting that certified mail receipt not only lets you track it, but you also know the date that it's postmarked. For this year, if it's up to 30 days late, we're looking at a $60 civil penalty per form. So if you have 1099 NECs, that would be $600. If we pass 30 days, so 31 days late, up to August 1st, we're looking at a $130 penalty. After August 1st, we're looking at $340 per form. And then also keep in mind, there is going to be interest that accrues along with these penalties. And if the IRS were to deem that you intentionally disregarded the rules here, you could face a penalty of $680 per form that's not filed on time. I don't want to see you in that situation, okay? So, if necessary, make sure you get this form filled out correctly because you are signing this under penalties of perjury. That is saying that you believe that, to the best of your knowledge, all of this is correct. If you are eligible to e-file it, make sure you do that through the IRS or FIRE system. And if you need to mail it, make sure that it gets mailed on time. All right. Now, if you found this video helpful, you've made it this far, why not give me a like? Let me know down in the comments what the most biggest aha moment was for you. Or if you have a question, drop that too. I'll see you guys in the next video.